This is the Paltalk News Network.
The views expressed are solely those of the speaker and not necessarily those of Paltalk.com, AVM Software, or its advertisers.
News Talk is online. News Talk Online is a production of Paltalk.com, the largest multimedia interactive program on the Internet, with more than 4 million unique users on demand on iTunes and on YouTube, and on my blog, GaryBaumgarten.com, where you're encouraged to post your comments, whether you agree with yours truly or not. No retribution. And thanks to our good friends at CRN Digital Talk Radio. We're syndicated to an additional 12 million households. I am your host, Gary Baumgarten. I welcome you to the show. Why do I sound like I'm on the telephone? Because I'm on the telephone. We got a little problem with the microphones, with the computer, and I'm in the field, and I am going to try in the middle of the show to do something that no man has ever done before, and that is multitask. While I'm talking to you, I'm going to try to fix the computer. Hold on. Hand me that hammer, please. Thank you. Ow. Okay. Thank you very much. Hey, everybody, and it's a good thing we're talking about medical issues today, because I think I just hit my nail. My thumb, I mean, not the nail that I was trying to pound into the computer. My guest today is Bill Silberg, who is going to be, or is, our new medical or health and medical correspondent for the Paltalk News Network. I've known Bill for, well, I can't tell you how many years, because if I do, maybe you'll figure out my real age, and that wouldn't be a good thing. But for decades, I think it's fair to say. Bill and I made each other's acquaintance when I was writing actually I was reporting. He was writing for the United Press International when it was a real wire service in Detroit. And after he left UPI, where he was an editor and bureau chief and a general assignment kind of fellow, because everybody there was a jack of all trades, with the exception of the sports person. And did you guys have an automotive? Yeah, an automotive.
Yeah, I was an auto writer.
An auto writer, but mainly, unlike the Associated Press that had a lot of folks on the bench to do specialized reporting, UPI did it with a very small staff and kicked AP's butt, at least in Detroit, if I do say so myself. Bill, you went into covering medical issues and then into executive positions medically related. Can you kind of fill us all in on your background?
I started covering science and medicine back in the UPI days. The nice thing about doing it in those days was that very few people actually knew what I was writing about, and so I didn't get edited very heavily, which was good, and then it gave me a lot of room to explore things. But it was bad because there weren't enough people watching for when I made mistakes, which happened quite a bit. But this was back in the 70s when we were at the early days of what is routine now in terms of understanding genetics and looking at new generations of cancer drugs, new sorts of diagnostic equipment. So it was a very interesting time, and just sort of grew from there. And as anybody who has followed what's been going on with health reform and everything related to that knows, it's a much more complicated world these days than it was not too long ago. But we'll talk about a little bit of that today.
Right, and you did a stint as a publisher at the Journal of American Medicine.
Yes, I was an editor, not the editor, at the Journal of the American Medical Association about 15 years ago. Also worked for an online medical publisher, a large one called Medscape. Did some work in health policy, and also worked at the New York Academy of Sciences. So all of this work has been looking at science and medicine, health policy over 20, 25 years.
Right. I would say 25 years. Before we get into that, I just want to do a little reminiscing. I don't know whether you realize this, but you allowed for me, when I was on the radio, to break huge stories that they otherwise would not allow me to report on the radio in Detroit. Did you know that?
I think you've mentioned that a few times to me. We gave you a sense of legitimacy. I used to like to joke about how you were otherwise face down in a gutter in the streets of Detroit somewhere, but somehow you got the inside story.
Something like that.
That's
yeah.
Right.
Basically, what happened is that the radio station was under extreme political pressure from the mayor's office to shut me up. Because I was reporting on all kinds of scandals in government in Detroit and crime.
You knew way too much.
I knew way too much, and the pressure was getting to my news director. He bent to the pressure, but he never broke. But he did bend to the pressure. It was really interesting because God bless him, he stood up to those sons of guns. But behind the scenes, we had very, shall we say, intense and fruitful discourse over the various complaints that were made about what I believe to be very fine reporting. So what happens, of course, is when you're on the air on the radio, everybody knows it's you. Oh, my God, there's Gary Baumgarten reporting this again. There's Gary Baumgarten reporting that again. But when you write for a wire service, you're an anonymous person. It's UPI. And so what I would do when I needed to cover a sensitive story, Bill here provided me with cover, because what I would do is I would call the story in to Bill first, and then you move it on the wire.
Like a fool, I'd put it out on the wire.
Yeah, he put it out on the wire, and then after it went on the wire, I could report on it for the radio station, and nobody was the wiser because everybody else had an abbreviated version of it, because everybody back then had both the Associated Press and UPI. Today, there are a lot of companies that don't even have the AP because they just can't afford to pay for wire services any longer. So 25 years ago, when you first delved into this a little bit, the medical issues and all that, I think one of the hot items on the burner a full 2.5 decades ago might very well have been health reform in the United States of America.
Well, not in the way we see it now, but the thing that people tend to forget is that this topic, not health reform per se, but the whole issue of insurance coverage and how the health system works, this is something that people have studied for many, many years. And health reform is a broad topic. How do we cover more people? How do we make the system work better? That's something that has been talked about in Washington and at the federal level literally since the very early days of this century. I believe Theodore Roosevelt first started talking about
it. Theodore Roosevelt?
Yes, the first Roosevelt in one way or another. And my son is actually a better historian of this than I am. But if you delve back into history, it sort of puts the lie to the argument that things are being rushed. This discussion has been going on in Republican administrations, Democratic administrations for